right. Well, we will get started this evening because we've got a lot of good information for you. Again, I'm Sharonda Robinson. Welcome to the 183 North Mobility Project, Meet the Project Team meeting. Thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate your participation and we're looking forward to your input tonight. Larissa is here. You heard her voice just a moment ago to provide Spanish interpretation. Larissa, mil
Um,
gracias.
yes, of course, thank you. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Larisa Dávila y soy su intérprete del inglés al español. Estoy acompañando a Sharonda en la presentación en este inicio. Ella nos dice que les da la bienvenida a todos al evento de Conoce al equipo del proyecto de la 183 Norte y en unos momentos les estaremos diciendo cómo pueden escuchar toda esta presentación en el idioma español.
Thank you, Larissa. Well, welcome everyone. We're going to get started. And Larissa just went over the Spanish interpretation. I'm Sharonda Robinson. I am your moderator for this evening. I'm part of the Community Outreach and Public Involvement team with Great Hills Constructors.
Muchas gracias a todos los que nos acompañan. Mi nombre es Sharonda Robinson y soy la moderadora en esta reunión encargada de liderar el proyecto de desarrollo público de la compañía Great Hills Constructors.
Construct, mil gracias. And we're going to go ahead and open up the Spanish interpretation room. Larissa, can you give us instructions on that tonight?
Yes, absolutely. Bienvenidos sean a esta reunión. El día de hoy estaremos interpretando toda la información en el idioma español. Si usted quiere escuchar esta reunión en el idioma español, por favor vaya a la parte inferior de la pantalla, a donde está el icono del mundo, donde está el icono que dice interpretación, y por favor seleccione el idioma español, donde lo llevará a un cuarto separado virtual, donde estarán escuchando toda la información en el idioma español. Si pueden hacerlo ahora, nos vemos en unos momentos.
Thank you so much. And so we'll go ahead and open up the interpretation room. We're really excited that this is our first meeting, our first community meeting of the 183 North project. And is the room open yet? All right. The English and Spanish interpretation room is available. So go ahead and pick the channel that you would like, and we'll send Larissa to the Spanish interpretation room. Have a good meeting, Larissa. Thank you. All right, we can go to the agenda. So we've got a full agenda for you this evening, and I want to make sure that you know what we plan to cover for tonight. We're going to talk about the purpose of today's meeting, why we're here, and we're going to cover opening remarks. We'll hear from the leader of the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority team. We'll learn about the entities, the project partners, those entities that are involved in delivering this project, making sure that it comes to fruition. We want to hear from you. We want to learn more about who's joined us this evening. So we'll do an audience poll, which I think you'll actually enjoy. We want to find out more about who's here with us. We're going to introduce well, not the entire, but the project team. There are a bunch of folks working on this project to bring it to fruition. And so we want you to learn about the design and construction professionals that are involved in the project. We'll go through a project overview, and this is the part of the presentation where we'll have an opportunity to walk you through some really key aspects of the 183 North project. And then I think what is also interesting for all of our attendees to make sure that they understand and know is the project schedule and how the project, the timelines and how the project may affect you in that way. There is a robust community and business outreach program for this project. We want to make sure that the communication that happens related to the construction is a two-way street. And then we want to take your questions and answers at the end. So that's our agenda for today, and we will go ahead and get started. And I'll share with you the purpose of today's meeting. And I'm looking down at my notes to make sure I cover everything. So forgive me for looking away from the camera from time to time. we want to make sure that we notify and inform you about the 183 North Mobility Project. And we want to introduce you to the project team and talk and let you know who's going to be supporting the project over the next 4 years. We want to answer your questions tonight. We hope that you've come with questions about the project and about the initial, we'll be able to answer questions about the initial phase of the 183 North Mobility Project. And we want to gather your input. We are beginning our listening. This is our launch meeting. And so we want to know what's important to you. And that's the purpose of today's meeting. All right. So we have some opening remarks, and we'll just get started with our leader of the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. 183 North is the latest major project of the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. And the purpose of this project is to deliver improved mobility along this corridor. And it's a major issue during the ever expanding peak traffic hours that we're experiencing, particularly in Northwest Austin. So James Bass has joined us. He is the executive director of the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority, and he's had a 35 plus year career with TxDOT before joining the Mobility Authority. Welcome, James.
Thank you, Sharonda. Good evening, and thanks to everybody for being online with us. My name is James Bass, and I am the Executive Director of the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. The Mobility Authority is an independent government agency that works with the support of our regional partners. And since we began in 2002, our goal has been to improve the transportation system in Williamson and Travis counties, which are experiencing unprecedented population growth. We implement innovative multimodal transportation solutions that reduce congestion and create transportation choices that enhance quality of life and economic vitality for Central Texans. We're excited to embark on the 183 North Mobility Project to further our mission and bring improvements to Northwest Austin on and off the roadway. I wanted to personally thank you all for your participation and interest this evening. And I can assure you that the Mobility Authority and the entire project team is committed to being a good partner to the community throughout the construction phase. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us with any questions or concerns at any time. And thank you again.
Thank you so much, James, for joining us this evening. We appreciate you. Now, we're all, or most of us, I would imagine, are somewhat familiar with using Zoom to provide comments in the chat and to do the Q&A that we mentioned. For this meeting, we wanted to have a robust dialogue with you and be interactive. And so we are using a platform that we call Menti, M-E-N-T-I. And we ask that if you are willing, you can open up another browser and you can go to Menti, www.menti.com, and then enter in the code 530063. And I see someone from my team has put that URL and the code in the chat for you. You can still listen to the meeting and watch the screen, but if you want to open up another screen, it will give you a different experience because we're going to be doing some Q&A and polling during that using Menti. Also, at the bottom of each slide, you can let us know what you're thinking or how you're feeling by hitting the heart button if you are getting the information and enjoying it, or a question. You can hit the question button if there's something that we need to come back to in the Q&A to ask questions. And so the number is, okay, so I see Scott saying there's a different number than on the slide. So I'm not sure, Scott. Oh, yes. Okay. No, what's in the chat is wrong. Thank you, Scott, for the quick action and eyes on that. The code number is 530063. So Dorcas, can you update the Mentimeter code that you entered? 530063. Thanks for that, Scott. Appreciate that. And I'm assuming that some folks are there. We can go to the next slide. And so when you're in Menti, this is what I just talked about. You can give feedback in Menti and use the icons at the bottom of the screen. And it's okay if you don't want to use the platform. You can go ahead and respond in the chat, and we'll track your responses that way as well. All right, so let's practice for those of you who are using Menti. Are we ready? Yes, I heard a resounding yes. All right, so test question, and these are all questions that you know the answer to. So how long have you lived in Austin or the surrounding area? And you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see the number going up. Right now we're at 22, and so we'll tap dance for a few more moments and give people about 10 more seconds to get their response in. If you're just joining and you'd like to participate in this part of the meeting, you can go to www.menti.com and use the code 530063 and participate there, or you can put your response in the chat as well. How long have you lived in Austin or surrounding areas? All right. The majority of the folks that are here this evening with us have been here 15 years or more. So, and then we've got a couple of folks 3 years or less. Welcome to Austin, surrounding area. We're so glad you're with us. And I see Bob, thank you. And Bobby, 22 years, 15 plus years. Thank you for your responses in the chat as well. All right, let's go to the next question. It got cold yesterday. I was kind of surprised, but it's fall, right? So tell us, what's your favorite fall color? What is your favorite fall? Burnt orange. We know what that means, right? And you can go ahead and also put your comment in the chat. This is going to be a fun group tonight. I appreciate that. What's your favorite fall color? All right, let's see if you guys get mine on here. We got 2 for burnt orange there. I think my favorite, and you can put your response in the chat as well. We just want to make sure that you're comfortable using Menti because we're going to come back to it a little later in today's meeting. So, yep, someone nailed it. My favorite fall color is maroon. All right. And we're up to 26 responses in Menti. So thanks for that, guys. All right, so keep Menti close. We will come back to it as part of this meeting and have a couple more questions for you to participate in. Next, we'd like to highlight some of the very important project partners that are helping us to deliver the 183 North Mobility Project. And to help us out with that is Mike Sexton, who is the Acting Director of Engineering for the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. Mike, welcome to tonight's meeting.
Good evening, everyone. As Sharonda mentioned, my name is Mike Sexton. I'm the Acting Director of Engineering for the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. Very happy to have everyone here tonight. It's a good crowd. Appreciate you taking your time this evening to come out and come involved on this project. Next slide, please. I want to just give thanks to the partners on this. The Mobility Authority is the sponsor of the 183 North Mobility Project and is developing it in partnership with several agencies. 2 of them are listed on the screen, Texas Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration. There's other partners, including the City of Austin, Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, or CAMPO, and also CAT Metro. These are the people that have helped put this project together. And then tonight you're going to meet the design build contractor for the project, which is Great Hills Constructors. They were selected after a very competitive process by the Mobility Authority and other industry experts. And we have great faith in their ability to do this job and be able to work with the community at large as this project is developed. Next slide. So as you might wonder a little bit why this project is going to be happening and why we brought this team together. For those that have driven the corridor, you know the congestion is there and it's building over the years. It's in the top 100 of most congested corridors in Texas. There's some good facts on the side related to that. Average daily traffic's over 132,000 cars a day, which is a significant number of vehicles and growing. And the project aims to improve the situation on the roadway as well as improving bicyclist and pedestrian mobility. The construction team at Great Hills Constructors will outline the details of the project here in a minute and be able to answer your questions about how that construction will move forward. We're looking forward to kicking off this project in early 2022, and we have a strong team in place to ensure the project's success. With that, I'll pass it back to Sharonda.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate that overview. There are a lot of really talented folks that are working on this project, and grateful to have the opportunity to work alongside them. As I mentioned earlier, we wanted to hear a little bit more or see a little bit more about who has joined us, and we've got about 66, almost 70 participants that are here tonight. And so using Menti, we want to make sure that we, if we can, that we learn a little bit more about you. So I'll go to the next slide. And just as a reminder, you can go to menti.com and enter the code 530063. It's at the top of the screen, or you can respond in the chat. And if someone could post the Menti code again, there you go. Thank you. The zip code for your residence. I didn't even read it out, and you guys are already there. Thanks for that. What is the zip code of your residence or business? Please enter that for us. And I think if you can scroll up on the screen, Damian, and people can see there you go. Keep scrolling. Or you can also drop your responses in the chat. All right. So it looks like most of the zip codes are in the project area. Thank you, Charlotte. I appreciate you putting your comment, your response in the chat. Zip code of your residence or business. Thank you, Katie. Great responses in the chat and on Menti as well. Thank you for that. So let's go to our next question, if you will, which is, what is your connection? Thank you, Bob, for responding to the previous question. What is your connection to the 183 North Mobility Project Corridor? Do you live along the corridor, work on property, attend school, entertainment, shop, eat, commute to another area, visit friends, use medical or social services, bike or walk along the corridor? All of that apply, and we'll give you a couple of moments for that. Thank you, KQ and Katie. And Bob Fitzner says he drives it every day. And Charlotte, we need to hang out because you're saying shop, eat, and visit friends. I like that. All right. We got up to 44 in the last question, and so we'll give folks a few more moments to get their responses into Menti. Bobby Hudson says he lives in an adjacent neighborhood, and we've got, I think the majority of the folks are saying that they go visit entertainment, shop and eat. And then the next highest category is live along the corridor. And then the next highest answer is commute through to another area. All right. Give it just 5 more seconds and then we will move. We've got, I think, 1 or 2 more for you. 2 more for you. All right, let's go to the next question, please. How do you travel along the project corridor? So do you use a personal vehicle? Do you take public transit, the bus? Do you take the rail system, carpool, bike, or walk? How do you travel along the project corridor? And you can choose all that apply. And also you can include your responses in the chat as well. So Judy, I know you're going to correct my last name pronunciation, so I'm not going to try it again, but personal vehicle, and Charlotte is back again, personal vehicle, and Katie, personal vehicle, as well as Bobby Hudson. Thank you all for responding. See, I told you these were all questions that you already know the answer to. All right. And we would love to know, I think we can go to the next question. What is the exit you use the most? Capital of Texas Highway, Great Hills, Oak Knoll, Breaker, Duval, Balcones, McNeil, Spicewood, Anderson Mill, Lake Creek, or Lakeline Mall. Breaker. Oak Knoll, okay. Mike Osborne, welcome to tonight's meeting, Mike. Says his most commonly used exit is the Duval exit. See what we have here in Minty. Looks like the biggest slice of this pie or pizza that we've got going here is North Capitol of Texas Highway. And then the second is Duval Road, and we've got a tie for Breaker Lane, Spicewood Springs, and Anderson Mill. And thank you, Katie, North Capitol of Texas Highway. All right, so now we know more about your mode of travel, how you travel throughout the corridor, the exit you use the most often. We also learned about whether you have a business or a home along the corridor, and what's your connection to the corridor. So thank you so much for giving us more insight into how you use the corridor. And David Powers is asking a question. Yes, McNeil and Spicewood Springs is the same exit, north or south, east or west, north or southbound. Right, you're right about that. Thank you. Okay, so now it's time for us to meet the project team. We really do appreciate you giving us more insight into who's here with us this evening. We want to introduce you to the team of professionals that are working behind the scenes on the mobility project. We have our next speaker, Pat Plinicki, who is a program manager with Great Hills Constructors. Pat, welcome.
Thanks, Sharonda. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us here tonight. As Sharonda mentioned, my name is Pat Plinicki, and I serve as a project manager for this project. My role on the project is to oversee the day-to-day operations, manage the project subcontractors and subconsultants, and ensure the safety of the project team and as well as the general traveling public. I have over 30 years of transportation construction experience that I'm bringing to this project, and I'm really looking forward to bringing these improvements to the Northwest Austin community. I live in the area as well, and I travel this corridor on a daily basis, so this project's important to me personally as well. Next slide, please. I get to work with a lot of great people. As you can see there on the screen, more members of the CTRMA team and staff. So let's start with the project team from the CTRMA, or the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. We've already met and heard from Mr. Bass and Mr. Sexton. We're also going to hear from Sylvia Shelton from the communication team later in the presentation about the outreach and engagement efforts for the project. Our team at GHC also works closely with Dan Freeman, and we've also included additional CTRMA staff who are supporting this project as well. Next slide, please. So I work for Great Hills Constructors, and so which is and I just want to explain that real quick. You may wonder, well, who is named Great Hills Constructors? Who is that? So we're a joint venture of two companies, Archer Western Contractors and Sun Construction. our company was awarded this design build contract for the project in February of 2021. And since then, we've been beginning work on the project behind the scenes with our design. Next slide, please. So I want to also introduce a couple of members from my team who work with me day to day. So first I have Ryan Holloway, who's one of my deputy project managers. Next, I have Benjamin Arnold, who's also one of my deputy project managers. Juan Miranda is my construction manager, and Chris Lines is a discipline manager. This is part of my group that's responsible for overseeing the different stages of development, from design and engineering to compliance and construction. These guys, along with myself, will help keep the project running smoothly. Next slide, please. So next we have the outreach team. This team is comprised of staff from the CTRMA, WSP, and ADESA Communications, with guidance from the CTRMA Communications and Public Outreach team. WSP and ADESA Communications will support the media and community relations, as well as business impact mitigation, which Sharon is going to tell you more about that later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So now I want to introduce another important aspect of the team, which is our design team. Our design firm is headed by Parsons, and so under Parsons, there's also some important members of our team. Definitely need to mention Cobb Finley, who's working on the utility design, PESC, who's working on the structural engineering, Sam Inc., who's doing the survey and subsurface utility engineering, as well as Arias, who's our geotechnical engineering firm on the project. Next slide, please. And then the next group of folks we have here under the oversight of our GHC team, the construction team sub-consultants includes Hicks and Company for environmental compliance, or Cullen and Associates, construction easements, ADESA Communications, public involvement, who we've obviously are familiar with by now in the presentation. And then we have Cobb Finley, who's also doing the utility coordination on the project. Okay, next slide. So our DBE participation goals are really important for the project. It's important for this project to utilize subcontractors with disadvantaged business enterprise, or DBE certifications. And currently 10% of our design subcontractors and 9% of our construction subcontractors are DBE certified. Next slide, please. All right, so project overview. Next, we're going to give you an overview of the important project highlights and the additional information. Okay. Next slide.
So this is the project video, and Pat, you're going to walk us through kind of a little bit of before and after, right, of a couple of the intersections for the project, so people can get a sense of what the project will look like once it's completed. All right.
That's correct, Sean.
All right, so are we ready to roll the video?
We are ready.
All right, perfect.
All right, as I mentioned earlier, this project limits cover approximately 9 miles along the US 183 corridor. The first intersection we're going to highlight for the audience is the northbound side of 183 there at Palm Springs Road. If you're familiar with the area, you'll see the Tesla dealership down below in the picture there. So this is before, this is what it currently looks like. And then after, you can see the pedestrian improvements and the shared use path that goes underneath this bridge area. You can see a great improvement right there through this area for pedestrians bicycles. We're going to take another look at it. We're zooming down in closer to the intersection. You're seeing the current project in its state now. Again, before where we are today. And then after, you're seeing a lot of good access there for pedestrians and bicyclists. And then also you can see the shared use path underneath the bridge as well. Be a great improvement. All right, so next we're gonna fly south along the 183 corridor, and we're gonna stop at the Duval Road intersection. Many of you in the audience are familiar with Duval, very busy intersection as well. Everybody probably recognizes the signature curve there on the 183 alignment. Now we're coming down to Duval itself. Now we're going down to take a closer look at the intersection, the current state. Now you can see the nice improvements we see here. Again, very improved pedestrian and bicycle access, dedicated bicycle lanes, and a nice clean intersection in this area. And that's our overview of a couple of highlights of intersections where you'll see some improvements in the future. All right. Now we're going to go to project highlights. So some additional improvements I want to key on. We're going to be adding a collector distributor to the southbound Mopac Frontage Road. This is going to allow southbound traffic on 183 to efficiently access the Mopac southbound Frontage Road from 183. Currently, it's a little difficult to maneuver through there. This will make that much more efficient. The next thing will be, there'll be installation of high-tech traffic monitoring systems for improved traffic maintenance and emergency response, as well as construction that will provide direct connection for Mopac via the new express lanes on 183. Next slide, please. One thing I'd like to just touch on real quick, I said the words collector distributor. Not everyone may be familiar with that term, but that's basically a flyover bridge that has a direct access from 183 down to the southbound Frontage Road on Mopac. So that's essentially a dedicated bridge for that traffic, keeps it out of some of the other traffic, makes it much more efficient. And here we can see the actually layout of the connector bridges from 183 to Mopac itself. This map shows the direct connectors to and from the Mopac express lanes, as well as the collector distributor that's going to help the congestion emerging traffic, making that transition from Mopac to 183. Thank you. Next slide. All right, so let's talk about some project benefits. The improvements of the 183 mobility project will improve mobility, connectivity, as well as accessibility and visibility. Once complete, the construction will help reduce traffic noise and response time for EMS and first responders. Okay, thank you. Next slide.
And Pat, can I jump in real quick? Because I want to make sure that Nancy, who asked the question, Nancy Elder, what is a collector distributor? That we actually answered her question to her satisfaction. And Kath Polito, we see your question. We're going to get to Q&A in just a few moments. All right, Nancy says yes. So Pat, keep going. Let's talk about the project schedule. I know folks want to hear about that.
Yeah, good deal. I'm glad that my response was understood. So thank you for letting me know that. Good. All right, well, let's go to the project schedule. All right, so currently in 2021, which is of course where we are now, we have we are in the design phase of the project, as well as the work planning, and as well as our subcontracting and procurement process. We started the process back in essentially March, April timeframe. Since then, our project team is assembled, our design team is assembled, our CTRMA team is assembled, and so we're working daily with all the folks on the team to do the design and the coordination of the project currently. So that's going to take us into next year, and we're getting very close to next year already. There's not much time left in this year. So next year we will complete the design for the project, and then we'll start construction next year. We anticipate starting construction the first quarter or so of next year. Going into 2023 and 2024, those are again, starting next year, we'll begin construction, but a lot of construction will still be going on, will of course be going on in 2023 as we work our way through the project, as well as into 2024 itself. So those are two really big years of construction. You should be seeing a lot of progress being made out there. We'll finish the project up in 2025, and road opens to traffic in 2026. All right, next slide. Thank you. So this graphic should give you hopefully a good indication of how the project is going to be phased, or the steps of construction. This is a pretty good graphic to help me explain that. Up there on the top of the screen in phase one, I want to direct your attention to the middle of the screen where you see the construction equipment working. So that's our phase one. That's the center median work. This is where we're going to start on the 183 main lanes, and I'm focusing on 183 in this slide. We'll talk about Mopac here in just a minute, but again, we're working in the center median, getting that filled in and completed. That's paving where there's currently grass, and then all the intersection bridges will be widening those to the inside, basically closing up the inside with new bridge work there. And then that will then give us a travel route all the way down the center of the project. You can also see on the outsides of this slide, we will fill in sidewalk from one end of the project to the other in both directions. A lot of you familiar with the sidewalk that's currently out there. It's not continuous at this point. It will be when we get through with the project. So we'll be working on the sidewalks on both sides of the road, as well as the center median work on the main lanes. So that's our phase one work. When we complete phase one, we'll go into phase two, which means that traffic is now shifted to the center, the portion we previously built on the main lanes. And then that allows us to have room to work on the outside of 183 for the fourth general purpose lane that we'll be adding to the project. That includes a lot of retaining wall work, and also some bridge widenings at the intersections as well. So that takes us into phase two. And those are really the two major phases of 183. If we go to the next slide, we'll talk about the Mopac Corridor. So this in phase one, essentially reverse of what we're doing on 183. We're going to start on the outside this time on Mopac. We're going to do our widening to the outside of the project for phase one. And what this does by doing that widening up front, that gets us to phase two, which means we switch traffic to that widening, kind of push traffic to the outside. As a lot of you are familiar, where the current express lanes are, we have to make room for the new direct connect structure bridges where they're going to touch down. So they touch down there in the center, as you can see illustrated there in the phase two drawing. And that's essentially the work that's going to be happening on Mopac. All right. So hopefully those graphics were helpful in explaining the process of our work. And thank you again very much. I'm going to turn it back over to Sharonda.
Thank you, Pat. I appreciate that overview and especially appreciate all of our attendees tonight placing their questions and comments in the chat as we go and also in the Q&A box. If you place them in the Q&A box, it makes it a whole lot easier for us to make sure that we captured everything. I'm trying to take notes as you guys are placing them in the chat, but if I miss you, if you place a question in the chat as we get to that later, just let me know. We're going to try to get to as many of these questions as we can tonight. So just a reminder to place that in the Q&A box for us. So next up, we want to discuss our outreach efforts for the 183 North Mobility Project. And you all are already putting your questions in, and so and comments. Please continue to do that so that we can get to you as soon as we complete this portion of our agenda. We have Sylvia Shelton with us, who is the communications manager for the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. And she's going to give us an overview of the Mobility Authority's commitment to outreach during the 183 North project. Sylvia, welcome to the meeting. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Sharonda. My name is Sylvia Shelton. I'm the communications manager at the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. Earlier, you heard James talk about our mission to implement innovative multimodal transportation options. And what that really boils down to for us is quality of life. And ultimately, the 183 North project will help increase quality of life by getting residents and drivers to and from your jobs, your friends and family's houses, to run errands, whatever your reason for traveling more reliably. But in the meantime, you're going to have to deal with construction, particularly the people that live along the corridor. And, to be blunt, construction is not fun. It's noisy and it's inconvenient, but that is why the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority is committed to comprehensive community outreach. Our top priority is to be considerate of and responsive to your concerns and needs. And we would love if our construction projects didn't have any negative impact on you at all, but that's unfortunately unrealistic. So we want you to know that we are truly listening and we will do what we can to solve your problems before and as they arise. And in an effort to be good partners to our community, we strive to proactively inform you about construction issues. We want to engage with you early and often. We want to really listen and acknowledge and respond promptly to any concerns that you might have. And our boots on the ground partners at ADISA can take you through a little bit more about what that means in depth. So Sharonda, take it away.
Thank you, Sylvia. Yes, construction can be very challenging. And so we want to make sure to try to help alleviate some of those challenges by making sure you're aware beforehand of what's happening and that we're addressing, as Sylvia said, as quickly as we can, any issues that you bring to our attention. So we wanted to make sure that you knew that we have a robust communications and outreach program planned for the 183 North Mobility Project that includes community meetings such as this. I mentioned earlier that this is really our kickoff to meet the project team and to announce that we're here and that we want to hear from you. We're going to be meeting with neighborhood associations and homeowners groups. We will be giving contractor updates. We know that there are several hundred businesses along this corridor where construction will be occurring. These improvements will be occurring. And so we're going to be working with the businesses and business owners along the corridor to make sure we understand how your business operates and what your needs are, and how we can mitigate some of those potential construction issues throughout the process. We'll be making sure that the entire community is aware through billboards and postcards and flyers, door hangers. I hope you saw the yard signs that we put up around the community for this meeting. And then I would also encourage you to sign up on our website, the 183 North project website, which is www.183north.com, because every week we are providing updates on lane closures. so that you can be aware. And we'll be we'll be starting up our project newsletter. So sign up on our website to receive that information. We also have a project hotline, and I see that my team has already placed that phone number in the chat for everyone. That project hotline number is 866-233-8044. That is answered by a person, one of our team members, Monday through Friday. And then if you leave a message for us, we'll get back to you as soon as we can if you're calling after hours. But please call and let us know your thoughts, ask your questions, or let us know if there are any issues that you're experiencing. We really want to make this project a success, and we know that the success of the project is, of course, building the improvements and making sure that the improvements happen, but also our interaction and relationship and connection to the community that is receiving the improvements. So you're a big part of our success. So with that, I think I covered everything, Sylvia, related to our communications overview. I also want to give you a little bit of a highlight. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of a plug for what's going on in a couple of months. So we're super excited to be able to launch this project, and we want to invite you to participate in our groundbreaking ceremony. Now it's going to be virtual, but we wanted to give you a heads up that we're planning a groundbreaking ceremony, and it'll be in early 2022. I can't believe this year is almost over and we're headed into a new year, but we want to make sure you know to be on the lookout for an invitation to the 183 North Mobility Project groundbreaking ceremony. So make a mental note of that, and we'll be excited to have you join us as well. And there'll be more information on that to come on our website, and of course we'll be communicating that. All right. So now I think we've reached the time for our meeting where we get to respond to your questions as well as your comments, and we are looking forward to that. Forgive me again for looking away. I'm going to go to the chat and pull up the Q&A because I want to moderate this. How much time do we have, folks, for Q&A tonight? Just want to do a time check with my team. Someone could put it in the chat for me or shout it out. I'd appreciate it. It looks like
we have 30 minutes for Q&A tonight.
All right, perfect. I think we can do this, guys. So I want to invite Mike Sexton, who you heard from earlier, who talked about our project partners. He's the acting engineering, make sure I get the title right, Director of Engineering for CTRMA. And Sylvia Shelton, who you just heard from, I want to invite them to join me as a panel, if you will, for the Q&A this evening. And we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. Again, if there's anything we can't answer, we will make sure to work to get a response and post that on our website for folks to come back to. And just to remind you, you guys are already ahead of the curve on this. Put your question in the Q&A feature, or you can raise your hand if you want to ask your question live. All right. So let's see where we start here. I have a great team who's been compiling the questions in the chat, and I'll kind of bounce back and forth for that. We've got questions about noise, about contracting opportunities, walls, the size of the roadway, you know, the phasing of construction. So we've got a lot of good questions that we can get answered for our community. I think I want to start, Pat, with a question for you. This is a booming economy, and we know that there are lots of opportunities. So, and someone asked earlier, what are the opportunities to potentially do work on this project as a contractor? And then I would imagine that you might also be hiring some other folks as well. Pat, you want to let us know?
Sure, that's a question I'd like to hear. Yes, we are actively looking for contractors to help us on this project. It depends on what scope they perform, but I would certainly recommend and like very much for you guys to reach out to us at our website. That will get me in touch with someone to speak with, to understand what kind of work your firm's able to do, and how we can hopefully look at that together, as well as employees. And I would just like to put out there for any of you listening in the audience, if you have family members or friends or people you know that are looking for a really good paying job in the construction industry on this project. We are going to be hiring a lot of folks starting next year, and we would welcome all applicants to contact us and give us an opportunity to talk to them. So that would be a good thing.
And Pat, can you let Bob Fitzner is asking, sorry about that. How do folks apply? Can you provide us with some details on how folks can get in touch with you or apply for a laborer or operator or foreman position?
Yes, we're gonna be sharing our website address in the near future with folks that want to do that. In the meanwhile, you can go to the 183north.com website, and there's a couple of email addresses on that website. You can reach out directly to those folks. They're on my team here, and we can get in touch with them that way, start the process.
So we're going to put in the chat for everyone the project website. You can visit that for contracting opportunities as they come up in the future. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we've got a lot of questions about just the project itself and, you know, the size of the lanes, what's happening in terms of different intersections like the Anderson Mill intersection and the Duval entrance intersection. And so can you help us understand, like one of the questions that we have is around the size of the lanes and what they'll look like. I think that comes from Scott. Will the current lanes be narrowed? Where does this room for 4 more lanes come from? Let's start there and then talk a little bit more about how the project is designed.
Yes, thank you. So on the lane width will be 11 foot. We won't be reducing the lane width. We'll be adding a 4th lane to the outside to give 4 general purpose lanes in each direction, northbound and southbound, along the whole corridor lanes. Of course, that's going to entail widening to the outside, where there's currently an auxiliary lane to merge in and out of ramp, either exit or on ramp or off ramp. Those lanes will also be included as well. So truly, the traveling public will get that 4th lane going in both directions, which should make a really nice difference for the project corridor.
And where does the additional, you can tell I'm not a construction person, right? But the additional footage or space for these additional lanes come from, I think is one of the questions our community is asking.
Well, fortunately, we have a small but nice piece of real estate between the frontage road and the existing retaining wall. So that's predominantly where that 4th lane is going to occupy currently.
Thank you for that. I'll come back to some of the questions related to construction. I want to talk a little bit about phasing and timing. We've got a couple of questions from folks around how the construction is going to actually happen. Will it be done in phases? I think people are interested in, will they be disrupted the entire 4 years for the entire corridor? Or are we going to break it into pieces? Like, how does that going to work for folks?
Well, kind of back to Sylvia's point earlier, there's going to be some, cohabitation with construction and the traveling public throughout the project. Now, our goal is, of course, to try to minimize that as much as possible. When we do work on the 183 or Mopac lanes, we'll be doing that work at night if we have to do any lane closures. We will not be closing any lanes during the day. It's most efficient for us to essentially work the whole corridor at one time, so to speak. Again, our goal is to finish the project as soon as possible, minimize disruption to the traveling public. We know that's important. When we're doing our work on the sidewalks outside of the frontage roads, we'll kind of block those sections out and do them 1 by 1 or 2 by 2, if you will. So we'll minimize the disruption down there as much as possible. We're really aware of that as well, and impacts to the businesses down the frontage road.
And just to make sure we're clear on this, Patrick O'Rourke is asking, will the work be taking place 24 hours a day on the project?
Not necessarily. There could be times where we need to do night and day work as well. I'm not going to say it won't happen, but we'll try to minimize that. But there are cases where we're just going to have to do some work at night because it will require us just getting access to get our equipment in and out of the work zones safely.
Okay, thank you for that. And so David Powers, Sylvia says that he got a flyer in the mail, and thank you for that. That's how he knew about tonight's meeting. So our work is paying off. That's great. Thank you for letting us know. Can we go over one more time for folks? What is the finished configuration, number of toll lanes, number of frontage road lanes, and number of express lanes or highway lanes? What's the finished configuration? And maybe it might be helpful to go back to one of the, I'm forgetting the name of it right now, cross sections. One of the cross sections for folks to look at that we shared earlier, to give people that illustration. Pat, do you think that's a good idea, or can you explain it well for us?
Yeah, I think it would be. I'm looking for the slide number real quick to help us.
Give us just a moment. We're going to make sure, because I think this is important. I think everyone, there are a lot of questions about what this project will look like. It's slide 41 or 40.
41.
Yeah, slide 41. The phasing for the main lanes of 183 North, and it's the typical cross section. So we'll give the team a moment to pull that up. And let's see if there are any other questions that we can ask and get answered here. Someone is asking about traffic safety, right? And how is traffic safety being incorporated into the planning? Thanks for getting that slide up for us. So Pat, can you answer the question about traffic safety, and then we can go to the configuration of the roadway?
Well, traffic safety or safety to the traveling public is one of the most important jobs we have out here. We take that very seriously. Our work planning always needs to take and will take that into account as we work on the project, as we have to get our equipment in, our men in, our materials and supplies in. So that's a very top priority to us and our team. That's very important to us, in other words. So we'll always take that into account as we do any work out there on the project. And the CTRMA will also, that's a very, very high priority to them as well. So they will also be monitoring and making sure that the processes we're doing are safe for everyone. But that's one of our main jobs we have to do out here. Hopefully that answers that question. Going back to the number of lanes, now this cross section doesn't really give us the final look, but I can talk through that.
Okay.
So going back to the cross section view, if you say just look at the bottom one there on 183, there'll be 4 general purpose lanes, and that 4th general purpose lanes comes from that outside widening you see on the right and left hand side. There's a crane down there on the right hand side of the screen. That's building that 4th general purpose lane. Same thing on the left side. That's where the 4 general purpose lanes. For the express lanes, there'll be 2 lanes in each direction. As traffic merges in and out of the express lanes, you've got those auxiliary lanes, and then you've got the 2 lanes going northbound and southbound. And then the frontage roads, now we don't improve or we don't widen the frontage roads. They stay the same configuration all the way through the corridor. We do not acquire any right-of-way for this project. We stay within the existing right-of-way that's currently there.
Okay.
Hopefully.
No, I think with the image that really helps as you're describing it. And so we'll see if we've got any more clarifying questions related to that. Can you talk a little bit about phasing? I know that you said that it's works well to tackle the project all at once, but are we starting, do we know what end we're starting on? And when will folks start to see impacts? There's a question about, northbound or southbound, and where are we starting?
Yeah, it's a good question. The general plan is to start on the south end of the project on the Mopac 183 interchange and work our way up north. Now during this, call it phase one, and my vernacular, phase one is we're working in the center, and then phase two is where we're working on the outsides. But as we're working in the center, we'll essentially have barrier wall on either side of the work zone to protect not only traveling public, but our construction workforce. And we won't be taking any existing lanes away. We don't ever do that on this project. The traveling public will always have 3 lanes in the northbound direction and the southbound direction, if that makes sense.
It does, and thank you for clarifying that. You can go ahead and take down this graphic. Thank you for pulling it up for us. Got a question. We know we've got a lot of businesses along this corridor. And so I'm sure that there's some business owners that are really anxious to know how this project is going to impact them. And we've got a question from Ashlyn Hutton, who wants to know, will the phasing allow for access to businesses off of the frontage road?
It absolutely will. We will not be blocking anybody's access to their business. I think we've got it's well north of 180 driveways on this project, which is quite a large number of driveways. And it takes its own detail or attention to detail, if you will, because there's so many driveways. So as we work up and down the corridor, our team, along with Adiz's help and the CTRMA's staff, will be contacting these property owners as we ahead of time before we start work there, notify you of the schedule of when we would like to begin work, and then we'll coordinate with each one to make sure that they have continual driveway access. In some cases, some property owners have a couple of driveways. That makes it a little easier because we can build one, leave the other one open, and then flop that over and do the same thing on the other one. Some cases there's one driveway. Some cases we'll have to do that over the weekend when hopefully no one's there. But in all cases, that's a very important part of our job, is to communicate effectively to the property owners, when we're going to be there, how we're going to do it, make sure we're coordinating with them so their business is not affected, because that's extremely important. We understand that they've got to stay open for business.
Thank you for that. And, we're going to pay special attention. I think this is where our team really comes into play as well, working with the construction folks, working with the CTRMA to make sure we understand what the needs are of the businesses along the corridor and how we can help support that during construction. So thank you for that question. We are very aware and very sensitive to the needs of our business community along the corridor. I want to move our conversation to noise and sound walls. And also want to thank Mike Sexton and Sylvia for hanging in there with us. It seems like Pat is the star of the Q&A tonight, but we might get one or two for you guys. But there is the question about sound suppression. And for me, this is one of the most interesting parts of the project, is that there's actually technology that has evolved in terms of roadway construction that makes roads softer, not softer, but the sound softer. We don't want to make the road softer, right? But the noise levels coming off the road are suppressed. So can you talk a little bit about that, Pat? The technology related to the construction of the roadway, and then specifically, will there be sound walls? Will there be sound suppression walls on the project?
Sure. So to answer the first question about the sound reduction on the concrete pavement, we have a process we're going to do on the existing pavement of 183 as well as our new pavement, and it's called next generation concrete surface. That's a fancy term for we're going to be grinding the existing pavement, and we're going to be taking out the transverse tine marks in the pavement, which really generates the road noise you hear on the highway. The tires as it cross those small corrugations in the pavement, and depending upon speed and tire size and whatnot, just creates a lot of that road noise. So part of our process is we will essentially grind those markings off, and then we'll replace them with longitudinal or grooves that go in the direction of traffic instead of across the traffic. And it's really amazing the difference that does make to the road noise. A lot of you familiar with the 290 highway as it goes into Houston and out of Houston. They've done a lot of that work there, and you've probably noticed a great reduction in noise levels there. So we'll be experiencing the same thing on this project. And then about the sound or the noise sound walls. So there's a couple of sound walls down between Steck and Anderson Lane that we're going to remove those walls, but then we're going to replace them, get them further away from the improvements we're doing the Mopac down there in that area. So we actually take those and move them back a little bit further away from the road down there for that section of the project. We don't have any sound walls on the 183 corridor we're going to be doing.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And so there are a couple of questions about specific intersections, and I'm scrolling through the list here. Folks are asking about information about the Duval intersection, what's happening at Anderson Mill, and there was one more that I'm looking for here. Duval, Anderson Mill. Sorry, I lost it in my scroll. There are lots of questions here. So let's just answer those two, and then I'll find the third one. Where can folks get more information about what those intersections are going to look like and what's happening related to this project?
Just going back to the graphic we looked at earlier, I don't know if everybody saw that, but it was a good illustration of how these intersections are going to be improved.
So
we're not going to
pull that back up for folks, because folks are asking, like, will the northbound frontage road be widened north of Duval? Will it encroach on the Walnut Creek tributary? That's a more specific question. But I think the cross section is in general, right?
Yeah, the
intersections. Okay.
Yeah,
pull that back up for folks.
And while we're pulling that up, I'll just kind of talk through some of that. The frontage roads will not be widened. They're going to stay the same configuration. But what happens at the intersections, we don't add any lanes to the intersections, but we do add some dedicated bike lanes on the intersections. And then we also are going to mill out the existing asphalt and replace it with new asphalt paving in the intersections. And then we're going to put down new pavement markings. The new pavement markings will very clearly delineate the pedestrian crossings at each of the islands and as they go across the intersections, as well as clearly delineate the bicycle lanes that'll be on the edge of those travel lanes there as well.
Yeah, and is this the right graphic? I think we want to go back to the cross section. That's what you were describing.
Sharon, I was actually referring back to the video we had where it showed the before and the after, and that's probably a little hard to pull up for this now, but
Yeah.
That was it kind of gives everyone a good indication of what that's going to look like down there.
So one of the things that we know that we're going to be doing for the project is basically illustrating what's happening from a construction standpoint. So you saw the video that will be available on the project website for everyone. And then we will make sure that we're paying attention to what we're getting from you all tonight, the intersections that you're interested in, so we can highlight that so that you know what's going on and what's happening for each of those intersections along the project, okay? So we've got a few more minutes for questions, and I'm going to go to the chat. I've been primarily in the Q&A, so thank you all for participating there. To make sure, I want to make sure I'm capturing folks. So Neil asked, can you please show the design of the 620-183 North intersection? as it and describe how eastbound 620 traffic will enter 183 South, and also the reverse, the northbound 183 for getting onto 620 West. How will that look when the project is complete, and how will you prepare for an eventual expansion of Highway 45 when it replaces 620? So this is the north end of the project. What's going on there?
I think that's a great question for Mike.
Right. Mike, you got one. So this is about what's happening at the north end of the project, the 620 183 intersection, and specifically preparation for the eventual expansion of State Highway 45 when it replaces 620.
So right now, the plan that we have, terminates before or terminates right at the intersection of 45. Originally in the schematic drawings, there was a plan for direct connectors that would allow traffic to go from northbound 183 to westbound 45 and vice versa. That was pulled out at this time because of the landing area to the west side of Lakeline Mall. There's just not any real estate to put the project in there. TxDOT has been working on a study along the 620 corridor itself to envision a future expansion of that corridor. So we'd have to point people towards their study to get a final result on where that's at and what their ultimate plan is. It's just not part of this project right now.
Okay. Thank you for that. And so one of the things that we want to make sure you're aware of as a participant in tonight's meeting is that we are documenting your questions to make sure that we have those and also responses so that we can share them with the community and folks who may not have been able to attend tonight's meeting. So thank you for asking questions that you're interested in, because your neighbors and other folks that are involved along this corridor will probably have some of the same questions. So we appreciate you for that. Let's see. So in the remaining few moments, we have more questions than we can answer tonight. And I'm going to try to run through as many as we can before we have to wrap up here. But is there any complementary work plan to alleviate congestion on southbound Mopac toll lane to avoid traffic backing up on the southbound 183 north lane? So any complementary work plan to alleviate congestion on the southbound Mopac toll lane to avoid traffic backing up on southbound 183 toll lanes? And that might be a question for Mike as well.
I'm understanding the correct question correctly. If they're talking about southbound Mopac north of 183 coming towards that intersection, there's not any improvements or changes proposed at this time. So it's something that we continue to look at as an agency between us and TxDOT and congestion in that corridor itself. When there's opportunities or changes that can be proposed, we've been working with them on those things. Right now, it's just a process that we haven't come up with anything that needs to change significantly or can be significantly changed.
All right. Thank you for that. And Sylvia, I'm going to give this one to you. Where will people be able to view the recording of tonight's meeting?
That is a great question. I think we will post it on our website, the 183 North project website, whenever it's ready. And since I'm talking about the 183 North website, the construction portion of that website will be launched and ready to go later this month. And we're very excited about it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. And there's a question here. I will second your question, Alan. Okay, so there's a conversation happening in the chat. Y'all are moving too fast for me. I'm trying to keep up here. There are folks asking about the final configuration in the Q&A. And so we'll go ahead and post. Thank you, Becca, for that. I'll post a link to everyone. And I can't believe I was talking about softer roads earlier. So the link I just posted was the link to the typical intersections. Thank you, Becca, for sharing that with us. And question about delays, Pat. I think this one is for you. I think folks are most sensitive to that, right? I lived through the construction of 183 expansion of 183. That was fun. And how are we handling delays, like for the project?
Well, that is a good question. I know that's of great interest to everyone. As part of one of the main purposes of my job on this project is to actively manage our schedule. Sometimes that's easier said than done. Sometimes things happen that cause these delays, but it's our job to overcome them. If something happens to cause us to get behind, then we're obligated to respond accordingly and work around or work through to overcome the problem. And sometimes that means we have to work, weekends, Saturdays, Sundays, and nights and days. I don't prefer to do that, but that has to be an option for us. So, my goal is to effectively manage the schedule, effectively communicate with our project team. We've got a great working relationship with the CTRMA of communication established, and we let them know in real time if we've got issues or problems, and do our best to manage a project that way.
Thank you for that. And there was a question about penalties and for delays and issues that you can't control, like supply chain as well. And I know that that's a part of how you're managing the overall project. So thank you for your interest in that question. Okay, I'm going to do, Bobby Hudson says there's not much detail on the 183 North website about the details of the roadway. When will that information be added? And that's something that we're actively working on. And one of the things that Sylvia talked about just a moment ago was the beefing up the construction section of the website. So we are actively as a team working on that. And this meeting really helps us to make sure we're highlighting what is important to the folks that live and work along the corridor. So we appreciate that. This question about bikes. One of the commitments that the Mobility Authority has is improving mobility for our region. And so that is different modes of transit. And on each of the projects that they've implemented in the Central Texas area, they've included bike paths or pathways in order to increase mobility of different types other than cars. So that is a commitment as well on this project. And there's a question about the bike lanes being added and the average speed differences between bikes. I think this is a safety concern. What are the average speed differences between bikes and vehicles that share the road? Research Boulevard is 50 miles per hour, so I can't imagine 10 to 25 mile per hour bikes sharing the road safely. Thank you for that comment. And I guess there's a question there as well. Anyone want to respond to the bike lanes that are being added along the corridor?
I can jump in a little bit here. So we're adding some connectivity. This is something that was part of our outreach during the environmental process, was to connect the corridors. If you drive, or I say drive, if you ride bikes through the corridors, across the corridors, there's quite a few corridors that were not connected across 183. 183 was kind of a barrier to that. Part of the environmental process was to come up with some connections. As everyone knows, the right of way is very tight in that area. It's fully developed. So what we did was create some shared use paths, which will allow some of that connectivity. We have an 8-foot shared use path to connect the Joliet-Village Road bike lanes to the bike lanes on Pond Springs. We also have another connection on Pond Springs to the bike lanes on Lake Creek Parkway. So it'll take you a little bit off the corridor and then bring you back to avoid the frontage road itself. And then we've also added sidewalks and some cross street connections as well. So while not ideal for some bike riders, it is a connectivity that wasn't there before, which required you to mingle truly with cars, and we're trying to provide a little bit of offset to them at this point.
Thank you. And so we're going to have to close out our Q&A. This has been amazing. I know how difficult doing a webinar format meeting is for our speakers and presenters. So thank you guys for hanging in there, because you don't get to see faces and know whether or not you're making that connection. So appreciate you all so much for your answers, and obviously to our community for your questions. I want to see if there are any last words before we start to close it out this evening from anyone, from Sylvia, from Mike, from Pat. Any last comments?
I'll go first, Pat. I'll dump it on you at the end for final comments. No, I just appreciate everyone coming out tonight. It is a long evening. Everyone's had a long day at work, and but this project's really important to the region, and we appreciate people coming out and asking questions. Helps us understand what's important to you, and will give us something to come back to y'all with additional information and give y'all at least a point of contact to understand who's out there on the corridor as we develop this for the next couple of years. So we look forward to working with y'all. This isn't the last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Sylvia?
Yeah, thank you. I echo what Mike said. Thank you all so much for coming out here and listening to everything and asking some really great questions. We're very excited to get this project underway. We can't wait to help get you with that quality of life and that connectivity. We're so excited about this project, and it should be getting underway at the beginning of the year, and you're probably going to see us a lot. And if you have any questions, comments, anything, please reach out. We are happy to help you in any way that we can. Like I said earlier, we want this to be as painless as possible, but if there are any bumps along the way, we're going to do what we can to, limit those. And then also, I just want to say thank you, Sharonda, for being a great moderator and for, keeping things running smoothly.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pat?
Yeah, thank you, Sharonda. Mike and Sylvia pretty well said it as far as thank everyone for being here tonight. Really appreciate the opportunity to somewhat meet the public. Our goal is not only be a great contractor for this project, but also to be a good neighbor. It's really important to us to come away from this project as a contracting team that's not only built a great project for everyone for the CTRMA, but we're thought of as a good contractor who's treated everyone fairly and responded to questions and issues. And that's a big deal. I know it's easy to say that, harder to do in practice, but that's a commitment we've made. That's a commitment I'm making as well. So again, thank you everyone tonight for joining us. Look forward to getting this project started. I know y'all are looking forward to getting the project done and getting more efficiency out there. And that's what we want to do for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I want to let you know that there are a bunch of folks who are working behind the scenes tonight to make sure that this goes smoothly, and would love for you to do a hand clap or put some applause, happy faces in the chat for them. But there's an amazing team that has been working day and night to pull this off. So Raj Shakir, Nancy Parker, Dorcas Ellis, and Damian Pantoja. Thank you all. Those are some of the voices that you heard coming. We call it the voice of God from out of nowhere. Thank you, Kath, for lifting them up. We appreciate their work. And thanks to Lindsay Mabry and Lindsay Welchel and Rebecca McGovern for helping pull this through for tonight. We deeply appreciate you. And thanks to you as our community. Just want to remind you that you can learn more and keep up with our progress by visiting 183north.com. Please sign up to receive updates on the project. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can follow us at 183north and give us a call, 866-223-8044. And we'll have a person who is answering the phone during normal business hours, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. You all could have been anywhere doing anything else tonight, and you chose to join tonight's conversation for us to share information with you and for us to hear from you about this project. And we are so grateful to you for that. Thank you for joining, and have an amazing evening.